In 1997, 5 children vanished inside a shopping mall in rural Illinois. No ransom notes, no bodies, no security footage, just a door to nowhere and a level no one was supposed to find. 28 years later, during demolition, a construction worker disappears beneath the foundation, and what's uncovered rewrites everything the public thought they knew. Welcome to the forgotten floor. Welcome to Level -1. Subscribe for more cinematic true crime thrillers based on long cold cases, buried trauma, and the secrets people were never meant to uncover. October 4th, 1997. Location: Oak Ridge Mall, Shelby County, Illinois. It started with a birthday balloon, pink, helium-filled, tied to the wrist of a child named Maren Kepler. She was 9 years old, wearing a party hat, a plastic tiara, and a toothy smile that hadn't yet learned not to trust strangers. Maren was one of 5 children at Cami Reese's birthday party, a small event thrown inside Kid Space Arcade at Oak Ridge Mall. By 2 p.m., the cake had been eaten, tickets won, tokens scattered. At 2:07 p.m., a security camera in the food court caught the last known footage of the children. Maren, Cami's younger brother Eli, twin boys Max and Mason Harlow, walking hand in hand toward Service Hall 4 behind the former J.C. Penney wing. They were never seen again. At 2:10, the balloon was found. It drifted, untied, down an empty hallway, scraping softly against the tile. An assistant mall manager, Charles Easton, found it and laughed to himself, thinking it had escaped a toddler. The laughter stopped when he noticed the open maintenance door, a door no one had keys for. The police were called by 2:30. The mall was evacuated by 3. Search dogs were brought in, drones, cadaver units. They found nothing but a concrete wall behind the open door. No passage, no tunnel, just sealed gray. As if the hallway had never existed. Cameras showed nothing unusual. Witnesses reported no screams, no strangers, no struggle. The children had simply disappeared. For 2 decades, Oak Ridge Mall rotted. Stores left, lights flickered, rats took over the food court. It was a dead mall by 2015, condemned by 2022, and scheduled for demolition in 2025. But on March 14th, 2025, a worker named Grant Lively vanished during the teardown. All that remained was his flashlight, and a message scratched into the concrete near where he'd been last seen. Level -1. I can hear them down here. March 15th, 2025. Location: Oak Ridge Mall. Demolition site: Shelby County, Illinois. The morning after Grant Lively vanished, a fog settled over the site like a bad omen. Not the kind that made weather reports, something thicker, heavier, residual, as one of the crane operators called it, rubbing his neck. The entire site shut down before noon. No one was talking about ghosts. Not yet, but the men stopped laughing, stopped bringing their radios, stopped stepping near the south wing, the place where Grant had been working when his flashlight was found, still on, pointing at nothing. No blood, no signs of a fall. Just a black scrawl on the concrete next to a foundation wall that shouldn't have existed. Level -1. I can hear them down here. One detective, Adeline Russo, was late to the scene. Not because of traffic, but because she had debated for 20 minutes whether she should even take the call. She had transferred to the county sheriff's department 2 years ago to get away from stories like this. From the cold cases, the missing children, the media vultures. But when the dispatcher said the name Oak Ridge Mall, her stomach turned. Russo had been 17 when the mall closed its doors in 1998, just months after the 5 children vanished. She remembered the rumors. Secret tunnels, cult activity, child trafficking. None of it proven, all of it unresolved. Now a man had vanished there, a grown man, during demolition. She parked her cruiser on the edge of the crumbling lot and stepped out into the chill, gravel crunching beneath her boots. The mall looked worse than she remembered. Gutted glass storefronts, a collapsed atrium, nature reclaiming everything. Ivy strangled the fire escape ladder like it wanted to pull it back down into the dirt. A half-buried sign still read, "Come see what's new," in faded bubble font. There hadn't been anything new here in decades, only what people wanted to forget. Site supervisor Mason Devons met her at the gate. "You're here about Grant?" he asked. He looked exhausted, eyes sunken. "We called it in yesterday. Nobody's found him." "I read the report," Russo said. "You shut the site down?" "We did. No one's going back in till someone explains how a grown man disappears inside solid concrete." She followed him to the cordoned-off area, now surrounded by orange cones and yellow tape. The area looked like the rest of the ruin. Partially collapsed, scattered debris, one support beam dangling like a snapped tendon. But near the south wall, where the department store wing had once been, a new section of foundation had been unearthed, flat, cold, and clean. Too clean. Russo crouched beside the scratched message. The words were shallow but deliberate. "Level -1, I can hear them down here. This wasn't part of the original mall plan," Mason said quietly. "That wall? It's not in the blueprints. We dug past the loading docks and found nothing but solid ground, until this showed up yesterday." Russo traced her gloved finger along the scratch marks. They were fresh. Whatever tool Grant had used to etch this, he'd done it in haste. "Do you have surveillance?" she asked. He shook his head. "It's a teardown, not a museum." "What about co-workers?" "He was alone," Mason replied. "Said he wanted to take a break from demo. Went to check the old service corridor for scrap metal. That's the last we saw of him." She narrowed her eyes. "Service corridor 4? Mason blinked. "Yeah, how'd you know?" "Inside the mall, it was worse. No sunlight reached the corridors anymore. Dust motes swirled in the flashlight beam like falling ash. Every step echoed too long, as if the sound was bouncing off unseen walls far beneath the floor. The tiles were cracked. Graffiti scarred the inside of the old food court like a post-apocalyptic journal. And behind the sealed wing where J.C. Penney once operated, Russo found it. Service corridor 4. Still there, still metal, still dented from years of disuse. The door stood slightly ajar, the same way it had 28 years ago in the footage. She remembered the grainy clip, played on the local news back in '97. 5 kids, 1 open door, then black. No one had been able to explain how the footage cut out, how the children vanished without a trace. Russo had obsessed over it for a year, saved newspaper clippings in a shoebox under her bed. Her mother threw them out. The hallway looked normal now, except for the dust pattern near the floor, scuffed, like someone had been dragged. "Grant!" she called out, even though she knew. No one answered. Only the faintest humming. Mechanical. Deep. She stepped inside. At the far end of the corridor she found the wall, poured concrete. No seams, no openings, no sign that anything had ever gone beyond it. But in the silence, something felt wrong. She placed her hand against the concrete. It was cold. Then she heard it. A single knock, then 2 more. Slow, measured. Knock, knock, knock. She stepped back. Another knock. There shouldn't be anything behind that wall. Not unless someone was inside the concrete or under it. Back at the station, Russo pulled the old case files from the archive. The Oak Ridge 5, as the media had called them. 5 names, 5 families, 5 sets of interviews that all ended in dead ends. She scanned the grainy surveillance photo again. The children walking toward Service Corridor 4. All smiles, a balloon floating behind them. Marin, Cammy, Eli, Maximum, Mason. She flipped to the last photo taken that day, the one snapped by the party store owner just before the kids left for the mall. This time, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Behind the glass of the storefront window, in the photo's reflection, was a sixth child. Not smiling, not moving, just watching from the mall directory kiosk. She was never identified, and no one ever remembered bringing a sixth child to the party. That night, Russo couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the knocks. 3, then 2, and she kept picturing the message scratched into the wall. "I can hear them down here." Her dream was worse. She was 9 again, back in the food court, hearing her name whispered from beneath the floor. She looked down. The tiles were clear glass now, and underneath, she could see them. All 5 missing kids, standing in a dark corridor, looking up at her. Not aged, not dead, just waiting. And in the corner of the glass floor, the 6th child whispered something Russo couldn't hear. But when she woke, the words were still in her head. Level -1 isn't a floor, it's a threshold. March 16th, 2025. Location, Shelby County Records Office. Archive basement. The blueprint was missing. Detective Adeline Russo sat hunched over a dust-choked filing cabinet in the basement of the Shelby County Records Office, lit by flickering fluorescent lights and the dull hum of a ceiling vent that hadn't been cleaned since the Reagan administration. The file drawer labeled Oak Ridge Mall. 1994 expansion plans contained exactly nothing. Just a manila divider and a paperclip. "Someone pulled it," the archivist said from behind her, his voice nasal, disinterested. "That file's been checked out since 2005 by the County Development Board, I think." 2005. Russo turned, irritation creeping into her voice. "That's 20 years ago." The man shrugged. "We're not exactly the Library of Congress down here." She stood, brushing off her knees. "Do you have microfilm copies?" The archivist looked doubtful. "If it's older than 96, maybe." They digitized a bunch of the plans after the city tried to push for that Modern Memory Initiative, which lasted all of 3 months. "There's a terminal over there." The machine blinked to life reluctantly, like waking a sleeping ghost. Russo fed in the roll labeled Oak Ridge Mall, expansion 1992 to 1997, and began scrolling. Frame by frame, floor plan by floor plan. Most of them were boring. Anchor store additions, food court HVAC layouts, cosmetic renovations. Then she found it. Frame 431, a preliminary floor plan dated February 18th, 1995. It was stamped unapproved, redacted. A red pen X marked through the center. She leaned in. There, at the base of the loading dock schematic, was a notation, Sublevel 1B, conditioned holding, storage access, restricted, service corridor, 4, only. Her stomach turned. It wasn't called Level -1, but it existed, and someone had tried to erase it. Russo printed the frame, folded it into a plastic sleeve, and checked the metadata. The architectural firm that filed it had gone defunct in 1999. No forwarding records, no paper trail. But the blueprint wasn't the only thing unusual. She noticed something drawn in the bottom right margin, barely visible in the dark ink. Not an architectural note. A figure. A child's silhouette. At first, she thought it was a watermark, but as she examined the curve of the shoulders and the faint outline of a balloon, she knew it was deliberate. Someone had etched a child into the blueprint, the same way the 6th child had appeared in the party photo. Not documented. Just present. Watching. She left the records office with a copy of the blueprint in hand, and a fresh headache brewing. She needed someone who understood the building's structure better than she did. Someone who'd worked the original construction. She made 2 calls. The first was to the county's structural engineer. The second was to the father of one of the missing boys. Robert Harlow hadn't done interviews in 20 years. After his twin sons disappeared, he'd moved upstate, divorced his wife, and refused media contact. But when Russo said the words sub-level blueprint, he met her at a diner off Highway 43 within 2 hours. He looked like a man crushed under the weight of memories he'd tried to forget. Gray stubble, calloused hands, faded blue jeans. But his eyes sharpened when she slid the blueprint across the table. "I worked this mall," he said flatly. "You were part of the construction?" He nodded. "Electrical crew. Hired out of Springfield. Most of it was standard build, but, she pressed. He traced a finger down the page to the area marked Sub-Level 1B. That wasn't part of the original plans. Russo blinked. "But this says—" "I know what it says. That sub-level was poured after hours. No inspections, no city sign-offs. Just us, the concrete guys, and a group of private contractors who didn't talk." She leaned closer. "What was it for?" He shook his head. "They called it conditioned holding. Said it was temporary. Used for supply storage. I didn't believe it then, and I sure as hell don't believe it now." "You think that's where they took the kids?" "I don't think," he said, voice brittle. "I know. Because my boys used to talk about it." Russo stared. "They said there was a room under the mall, a place with no lights, no color, just humming. Said a man in a red jacket told them if they were ever lost, to find the hallway with the blue square and knock 3 times. Her skin went cold. In Grant's message, the knocking was part of the pattern. 3 knocks. Then 2. "What's the blue square?" she asked. Harlow's voice cracked. "I don't know, but my sons drew it in chalk on the garage floor, a week before they disappeared." Back at her apartment, Russo pinned the blueprint to the wall next to the surveillance photo and Grant's etched message. A new picture was forming. Service Corridor 4 was the access point. Sub-Level 1B was real, scrubbed from public records. A 6th child was present in photos. A contractor remembered an unofficial room beneath the mall, and a missing construction worker left a message about hearing them. She stared at the photos until her vision blurred. At the center of all of it was the threshold. Level -1. Not a floor, a passage. Something that wasn't supposed to exist, but did. And someone had been protecting it. The knock came at 2:11 a.m. Russo was still awake, eyes bloodshot, researching archived footage when she heard it. 3 knocks at her door. She froze. 3 knocks, then 2, exactly like the pattern. Her blood ran cold. She drew her weapon and moved toward the peephole. Nobody there. She opened the door slowly, cautiously, and found an envelope taped to the frame. Inside was a Polaroid photo, aged and faded. It showed the inside of a concrete room. A child stood against the wall, blurry, barefoot, wearing a party hat. Behind her was a sign, Subject 6, Observation in Progress. Beneath the photo, someone had written, "You found the plans, now find the lock." March 17th, 2025. Location, Oak Ridge Mall, South Foundation Wall. By 7 a.m., Detective Adeline Russo was standing once again in the decaying skeleton of Oak Ridge Mall, this time with a new determination and a crowbar in hand. She had barely slept. The Polaroid had stolen that luxury. She kept seeing the girl in the photo, blurry, barefoot, standing in a room made of poured concrete, her eyes turned toward the camera like she knew she wasn't coming back. Subject 6, Observation in Progress. The idea of children being watched, observed, in silence, underground, unrecorded by the world above. It made Russo's breath catch every time she let it sink in. If the message on the back of the photo was right, there had to be a lock, some kind of entrance, a sealed point they missed before. "You found the plans, now find the lock." The South Foundation wall, where Grant Lively had disappeared, was silent again. The concrete had cooled. The construction crew remained off-site, and the barrier tape fluttered in the wind like cautionary ribbon on a crime scene nobody understood. Russo scanned the surface again, slower this time. Most of it was seamless. Modern poured slabs with no exposed hinges, no marks. Except for one patch, rougher than the others. Dust hadn't settled on it the same way. The ridges weren't aligned. The concrete had a slightly different tone, grayer, as if cured in a different season or batch. She crouched, brushed her fingers along the edge. A faint rectangular outline emerged beneath the grime. Not a door, but maybe a panel, poured to blend. At the corner, a steel bolt jutted out, almost invisible. She tapped it. Hollow. Something was behind it. She called in 2 crime scene technicians, both from her trusted pool, people she knew wouldn't leak to the press. Within 20 minutes, the team arrived with portable imaging equipment and acoustic tools. The first scan confirmed Russo's suspicion. A hollow cavity sat behind the panel, roughly 4 feet deep, 10 feet across, framed in rebar. But the strange part was the floor beneath it. There was none. Just a shaft. Going down. Looks like the panels poured over an access tunnel, one of the techs said. Probably insulated behind this wall. Could be a vertical shaft, maybe even a slide design. Slide? Russo asked. Old military or industrial architecture sometimes used chute designs for vertical drops. Harder to escape from, easier to move people or materials one way. The tech ran his hand along the bolt again. It's not locked, just sealed. You want us to open it? Russo nodded once. Cut it. The rotary cutter shrieked against the concrete. For nearly 10 minutes, the mall filled with the sound of metal grinding stone. Dust coated their clothes, eyes squinted behind goggles. Finally, with a dull snap, the rebar gave, and the slab began to shift. They lowered it gently with a rig. Behind it, a black shaft, square-shaped, reinforced with metal and what looked like foam insulation, the kind used in audio recording booths. A rope ladder was bolted to the side, but it looked aged, frayed, unsafe. Russo shined her flashlight down. It swallowed the beam. No echo, no reflection, just black. I'm going in, she said. The descent was exactly 52 feet. Her boots hit concrete at the bottom with a soft thud. She crouched, flashlight sweeping across the walls. She was in a square room, roughly 10 feet by 10. All concrete, no windows, no exits, except one. A sealed metal door sat at the far wall, bolted from the outside, just like the one in the Polaroid, and above it, painted in faded red block letters, Subject 6, Observation in Progress. Her breath caught. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't a hoax. This was real. She radioed to the team above. I found it. The observation room. Get the forensics team prepped. Cameras, light grid, biological sweep. She approached the door and studied the frame. It had been welded shut decades ago, but age and rot had weakened the seams. She worked the crowbar into the edge and leaned in. The groan of metal was deafening in the quiet. When the door cracked, a stale rush of air pushed out, musty like mildew and skin. Inside was a single chair bolted to the floor, a plastic table with one cracked leg, and a mirror set into the wall, two-way glass now shattered. In the corner, a small plastic butterfly nightlight, unplugged but intact. On the far wall, hundreds of tally marks. And beside them, in red crayon, Subject 6, I was good today. Please let me out. The crime scene text descended within an hour. They photographed everything, collected the crayon, bagged the butterfly. Detective, one of them called out. You need to see this. He held up a rusted metal clipboard, found beneath the chair. Inside, a laminated index card with a typed label, Subject 6. Female initial intake age, 9. Duration, 14 days. Compliance level, moderate. Final status, discarded. Russo stared. Discarded, like a piece of furniture, like an error. Back at the station, she placed the card on her desk next to the Polaroid. This girl, Subject 6, had been held in a room no one knew existed, underground, in a facility not listed on any city plan, through a corridor not monitored by security. She was recorded, observed, taught to perform, then erased. The psychological implications hit hard. The butterfly nightlight, the chair, the crayon writing, the tally marks. This wasn't punishment. This was testing. She picked up her phone and called Robert Harlow. He answered on the second ring. "We found it," she said quietly. "We found where they kept her." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, if there was a Subject 6, there were others. March 18th, 2025. Location: Oak Ridge Mall, sub-level excavation zone. By morning, word of the underground room had leaked. A local journalist from the Shelby Record posted a drone photo of the open shaft with the caption, "Level 1, the mall hid a room. What else is down there?" The story spread like rot in an old building. By noon, a crowd had formed behind the security fencing. Locals, thrill seekers, conspiracy YouTubers with cameras and selfie sticks. Detective Adeline Russo ignored them all. She stood at the edge of the open shaft with a new blueprint in hand. One of the forensics techs had overlaid last night's laser scan with the original microfilm frame. There was something deeper. Another room, a separate structure, partially buried beneath the floor of Subject 6's observation cell. Not concrete, not steel, plaster and foam. Cheaper, lighter, easier to erase. "You see this?" the tech beside her asked, tapping the scan. "Hollow here and here." "How deep?" Russo asked. "Another 20 feet, then it flattens. Could be another chamber, maybe a corridor, but here's the weird part." He pointed to a thin rectangular box, barely 2 feet wide. No entrance, no ladder, no access point at all. Just a void. Russo stared at the scan, heart tightening. Then how did they get people down there? It took 3 hours to breach the floor. The concrete beneath Subject 6's cell cracked in layers, each slab thinner than the last, until the final panel gave way with a hollow pop. Below, a low shaft, tight, barely shoulder width, descended at a steep angle into darkness. Russo lowered a cable light. The beam fell away into nothing. The sound that came back was not silence. It was humming. Not mechanical, not electrical. Musical. A low, almost childlike hum, as if someone or something was singing to itself in the dark. They named it Room 7. The forensic team made entry via a secured rope system, dropping down one by one with full harnesses and backup oxygen. Russo followed last. The space opened up unexpectedly after 20 feet. A long corridor lined with foam paneling. The ceiling was low. The smell was sharp and chemical, like expired glue. There were 4 doors, each marked with a number. Each one had a viewing panel, like a hospital observation cell. Each room inside had a chair, a mirror, and a speaker system. And written in wax pencil across the walls were phrases like, "Say the line again. You're being very good. Static is safe." Russo's pulse quickened. This wasn't an accidental space. This was built. She opened door 02 first. Inside, a decayed cassette player still plugged into the wall outlet, though no electricity flowed through the sub-level. The tape inside was labeled Subject 3. She collected it carefully, bagged it, moved on. Door 4 held a child's shoe, white canvas, the sole marked with the number 9 in red ink. Door 1 had a stack of water-damaged index cards, each stamped with a symbol. A butterfly split in half. And door 3 had the worst of them all. Not a room. A pit. A vertical shaft like a dumbwaiter, but deeper, lined with foam and wire mesh. At the bottom was a broken speaker, the kind used in behavioral conditioning labs, and carved into the foam above it. She didn't listen. She was given the humming room. Later, back at the lab, Russo had the tape digitized. The forensic tech hit play, and the speakers hissed to life. Click. Subject 3 is non-compliant today. We are resuming auditory loop. Then the sound. A soft, repetitive hum, not a machine, a voice, a child's voice. Low, gentle, tuneless, like someone had been humming to survive. Then the voice of an adult. Repeat the instruction, please. Silence. Repeat the instruction. Then a broken childlike whisper. I will be still. I will be quiet. I will be useful. Russo turned off the speaker. Her hands trembled. Jesus, the tech muttered. What the hell was this place? That night, Russo returned to the mall alone. She walked the empty atrium in silence, flashlight flickering off broken signs and shattered skylights. The farther she walked, the more she began to feel it. A pressure, a presence, something below her feet. Not just memories, witnesses. The children who had walked into the service corridor and never come back. The sixth child in the photo. Subject 6 in the room. And now, the voice on the tape. She sat in the ruins of the food court and pulled out her notebook. Then she began writing names. Marin Kepler, Cami Reese, Eli Reese, Max Harlow, Mason Harlow. Unknown girl. Party photo subject 6, observation room subject 3, humming room. Each one was someone. Each one had been taken, used, recorded, conditioned, then erased. She looked down at her page and added one final line. They were not lost. They were put away. As she left the mall, a new message appeared on her phone. Unknown number, no caller ID. Stop going down. There's a reason we sealed it. March 19th, 2025. Location, Springfield, Illinois. Former office of Danziger and Holt Architects. The building was dead. Detective Adeline Russo stood in the ruins of what used to be the architectural firm Danziger and Holt, the original firm listed on the 1995 Oak Ridge Mall expansion blueprints. The company had dissolved in 1999. The office was sold, shuttered, then reopened as a tax firm that folded during the pandemic. Now it sat as a hollow structure just off a service road on the outskirts of Springfield, its lobby still bearing the faint ghost of its old signage etched in the wall. But Russo wasn't here for decor. She was here for the name scribbled on the corner of the redacted blueprint. S. Calder, design lead, sub-level 1B. There was only one Calder listed in the firm's old employee files. Samuel Calder, a draftsman, mid-level, worked briefly between 94 and 96, and according to a police report buried in local archives, he'd gone missing 2 months after the children disappeared in 1997. The office was unlocked, not abandoned, recently entered. Graffiti marked the inside hall. God is watching, smeared in red spray paint across the break room. But near the back, in a partially collapsed storage room, Russo found a cardboard box beneath a broken desk, stamped with a label. Calder, private drawings, do not archive. She pulled it out carefully. Inside, dozens of hand-drawn floor plans, all on yellow drafting paper, all versions of the same schematic, revisions of sub-level 1B. Each sketch showed slight variations in layout, but the constant. A central corridor marked spine, branching off into rooms labeled only by numbers. R1, R2, R3, R4, and finally, R Infinity Room Infinity. There were no doors, no measurements, just the symbol and one phrase scribbled beneath it. She sings in the quiet place. Russo brought the box back to the station and laid out the pages across the evidence board. Each new room had corresponding design notes, acoustic paneling, reinforced flooring, soundproof materials. But what stood out were the strange, non-architectural annotations, marginalia written like journal entries. They're not rooms, they're environments. They don't test behavior, they condition it. They told me never to use names, and beneath one of the sketches of room R4, just 3 words, underlined twice. The girl knew. She pulled the incident report. Samuel Calder, age 36, had been reported missing by a neighbor after failing to collect his mail for 2 weeks in August 1997. His apartment had been locked from the inside. No sign of struggle, no notes. Only his drafting table left covered with maps of a personal project. Authorities ruled it a walkaway. Suicide suspected. But now, Russo was certain of something else. Calder didn't run. He disappeared the same way the children had, and he knew too much. She interviewed the original filing officer, Detective Ronell Markey, now retired, living in a quiet subdivision with a dog named Chips and a backyard koi pond. He met her with a guarded look and a glass of iced tea. "You hear about Calder?" "Yes," Russo said, "and the sub-level plans." Markey stared at her a moment, then leaned back. "I'll tell you what I remember," he said. "But you need to understand something. I was warned off that case." "By who?" "City Development Board," he said. "One guy in particular. Name was Gerald Penn. Wore a suit like it was a uniform. Showed up at the precinct 2 days after the report was filed. Took the file. Said Calder had been relocated under protective terms." Russo frowned. "Protective from what?" Markey gave a thin smile. "From himself. From the things he drew. From what he knew about that mall." Back at the station, Russo dug into Gerald Penn. He didn't exist in any public-facing city roles, but she found a reference in a scanned 1998 city email archive. Subject line: Calder breach, fire suppression warning. Sender: g.penn@stayug.us. She stared at the domain, staug.us. She pulled out her notepad and wrote the letters across a clean page. STAUG St. Augustine. The same name that appeared on the observation room form next to Subject 6. The group running the underground rooms, the ones recording and conditioning children. They were never just architects. They were building something that could disappear people, and they used a mall to do it. That night, another message arrived on her phone. No number, no timestamp, just a line of text. R Infinity still hums. Room Infinity was never shut down. And attached, a new image. Grainy, dark. A still frame from a video camera showing a girl with her back turned, barefoot, hunched, standing at the end of a hallway lined with mirrors. And on the wall behind her, static Subject 9. Russo didn't sleep. She began connecting the dots on her wall, string-linking photos, scans, blueprints, and names. 11 children. At least 5 vanished publicly. Others existed only in files, tapes, room assignments. And now, Room Infinity. The girl who sings. Static. Subject 9. She stood at the window of her apartment, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere beneath her feet, deeper than the mall, deeper than the concrete, was a room that hadn't gone dark. A place where something was still humming, waiting to be found. March 21st, 2025. Location: Oak Ridge Mall. Sub-level excavation zone, R Infinity entry point. There were no blueprints for Room Infinity. Only fragments. Hollow voids on laser scans, pencil sketches from a vanished draftsman. Hints whispered in margins. A photograph of a barefoot girl in a mirrored hallway. And a digital message with no sender ID. R Infinity still hums. Detective Adeline Russo stood once again in the sub-level corridor beneath the ruins of Oak Ridge Mall, the air cold and static-laced. Today, they were going deeper. The acoustic engineer on site was named Kelsa Yan, brought in to analyze the strange reverb patterns detected beneath Room 7. "There's a pocket," Kelsa said, tapping the sonar overlay on her tablet. "Roughly spherical, 30 feet underground, directly beneath the pit." "No rebar?" Russo asked. "None. It's not a standard chamber. It's soft. The sonar scatters." "Scatters how?" Kelsa glanced up, concerned behind her glasses, like it's absorbing the sound, not reflecting it. Soundproofed? More like silenced. They drilled carefully. Just one borehole first. Thin, precise, aimed straight through the center of the acoustic anomaly. When the drill broke through, It dropped unexpectedly. No resistance, no second layer. A rope camera was lowered. The footage that came back showed a round room lined entirely in mirrors. No furniture, no lighting. But in the center, a pair of bare footprints, made in what looked like dust or ash, leading toward the edge of the frame, and then vanishing. Kelsa replayed the footage again and again. There were no reflections, only darkness where a face should have been. Russo suited up and descended alone. The shaft was tight and quiet. No echoes, no sound. Even her breathing felt dampened. She entered room infinity through the ceiling via a temporary harness rig. Inside, her flashlight barely functioned. The beam died halfway across the room, swallowed by the mirrored walls. Each panel shimmered faintly, not with light, but with motion, as if the mirrors remembered what they'd seen. Footsteps, shadows, faces pressed to glass. In one of them, Russo swore she saw herself standing, but her reflection turned away from her. The center of the room was etched with a symbol, infinity drawn in crayon. Below it, the words, "She sang when we were afraid. She sang even when they stopped listening." There was a speaker embedded into the wall behind it, dead now but old. Not modern tech, analog, vintage, hospital grade, 1970s or earlier. Russo noted the serial number, took photos, bagged the dust samples. Then she noticed the faint hum, not in the room, in her headset, a frequency no one was transmitting, just a quiet, rising tone, like a voice trying to form a melody. Familiar, childlike, like the humming from Subject 3's tape. The room was empty when she left it. But that night, as Russo reviewed the footage, her heart stopped. Frame 313 of the rope cam's descent, just before she entered the room, caught a figure. A girl, hunched, standing in the corner, eyes glowing faintly from the camera's infrared light. By frame 320, she was gone. No exit, no movement, no explanation. But left behind on the mirrored wall, barely visible in the camera light, a smudged palm print. And beneath it, written backward, "Stay quiet, they'll hear you thinking." She didn't report the image. Not yet. Instead, Russo went home and spread the photos on her wall again. This time she rearranged everything by room. Subject 3, humming room, Subject 6, observation room, Subject 9, static room, unknown girl, room infinity. Each subject, each space, uniquely designed, personalized, behavioral, not just for containment, for study. Each child had a symbol, a number, a phrase. And now, room infinity, a place that predated all the others, according to Calder's sketches. The original control chamber, the place where the system began. Her phone buzzed. A new number. Blocked. She picked up, breath shallow. Nothing at first. Then a voice, distant and small, like it came from beneath water. "She still sings." Then silence. And a tone. Same one from room infinity. Same one from Subject 3's tape. Russo dropped the phone. And for the first time in her adult life, she was afraid to go back underground. March 23rd, 2025. Location, Shelby County Sheriff's Department. Evidence Room 4C. The report was stamped, classified, internal distribution only. Not an official police file. Not part of any database Russo had access to. She found it inside an unmarked cardboard box, buried in a secondary evidence locker after searching the name Saint Augustine across decommissioned federal operations records. It wasn't labeled as a mall case. It was titled Project St. Augustine. Silence. Protocol. Phase 2. Revision. D-dated 1993. Russo sat in the dim glow of Evidence Room 4C, the air thick with dust and long-stored secrets. The file smelled of mildew and adhesive. Inside, she found a mission brief. 10 scanned intake forms labeled Subject 1 through Subject 10. Psychological observation memos, audio conditioning logs, a page titled Silence Protocol, Application Notes. The more she read, the more she understood. This wasn't a kidnapping operation. It was a psychological trial. The mission brief opened like a white paper. Purpose: to explore the long-term behavioral effects of environmental silence, sensory reduction, and message repetition on children between the ages of 7 to 11. Location: Containment Zone B. Commercial Disguised Structure, CDS. Midwestern Mall. Goal: establish thresholds for control language acceptance, emotional numbing, and reflexive obedience. Russo felt nausea creep up her throat. These weren't criminals. They weren't runaways. They were test subjects. Children taken from statistically neglected populations, those least likely to be noticed if they vanished. 1 child per test unit. The name Cammie Reese was listed on Subject 2's intake sheet. Underneath, her assigned phrase, "I obey to stay invisible." The silence protocol was a methodology. No speaking for 72 hours. No touch, no external sounds. Each room was fitted with white noise generators, 2-way mirrors, speaker prompts, and reward-punishment loops. At predetermined intervals, the children would hear a specific line, whispered through the walls. "You're doing better now." That phrase was repeated until the child either responded with the correct behavioral marker, eye contact, posture, verbal mimicry, or shut down. Failures were marked static response or reconditioning required. Subject 6 had reached near breakthrough before being discarded. No name, no death record, no exit log. Just that word again, discarded. Russo stepped away from the desk. She needed air. She needed to not scream, because this wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a controlled behavioral study masquerading as disappearance. Someone had built an underground network of psychological cages under a shopping mall. Children were isolated, tested, reshaped, and forgotten. But the worst part? The project had a phase 2. A separate folder, clipped to the back, was titled Phase 2, Stimulus Persistence. 1 page, handwritten. It detailed an ongoing experiment involving a subject placed in an unending mirrored room where only one stimulus remained. The sound of their own voice, refracted and reversed. A loop without exit. Intended duration, infinite exposure. At the bottom, a signature, G pen, and next to it, in red pencil, Room Infinity successful, silence protocol complete. She drove back to the mall at night, alone. Not because it was smart, not because she had orders, because she needed to know what they'd left behind. She entered through the south demolition gate and made her way to the sub-level shaft, down past room 6, past the foam-lined hallway, until she stood once more before the hatch to Room Infinity. It felt colder now. The mirrors had fogged. But in the center of the room sat a new object, a tape recorder. Old, cassette style. Same model as the one in Subject 3's cell, and next to it, a note. For her, in case she comes back. She pressed play tape crackle. A child's voice. I stayed quiet. I stayed still. I did what they asked. But she still sings, even when no one listens. You made us invisible, but we still see each other in the mirrors. We hum to find our way back. Hum begins. The same tone, the same voice, but now layered. Multiple children, an eerie chorus of memory. Then silence, and one final whisper. We remember the girl who wouldn't stop singing. She's still here. As Russo left the chamber, she saw a new set of footprints in the dust. Small, barefoot, leading toward the wall, and on the mirror beside it. You heard us. Now don't forget us. March 24th, 2025. Location, Oak Ridge Mall, Corridor 4. Remnants. Detective Adeline Russo couldn't explain the dreams. She wasn't sleeping, not properly, but when she did, brief pockets of rest in the early morning hours, she'd find herself back in the mall, walking the empty halls, always barefoot, always following a blue square, sometimes painted on the wall, other times chalked on the tile, and once glowing like a neon pulse on the floor. In every dream, she heard humming. In every dream, it stopped just as she reached the blue square. She'd wake up choking on silence. By 9 a.m., she was back at the site. The forensic team had rescanned Service Corridor 4 using 3D LiDAR mapping, and there it was, right in the corner where the concrete curved toward the foundation wall. A faint discoloration. Rectangular, 4 feet by 4 feet. Russo approached the spot with a flashlight. Under the dust and corrosion, the outline of a painted blue square emerged. It had been scrubbed, but not perfectly. Inside the square, scratched with something sharp, were 4 words. "Knock for the door." She called up Robert Harlow, the father of the missing twins. He answered on the first ring. "I need to ask you something," she said. "You told me your sons drew a blue square in your garage before they disappeared." "Yeah," Harlow said. "Kept circling it with sidewalk chalk. Drove their mother crazy." "Did they ever say what it meant?" Silence. Then, "They said it was the place you go when you want to be forgotten." Russo's hand clenched around the phone. "And if you didn't want to be forgotten?" "They said you had to knock twice slow, then once fast." He exhaled. "I thought it was a game." Russo stood before the square and raised her fist. 2 knocks, slow, then 1, sharp. The echo bounced once, then changed, like it hit something hollow behind the wall. She stepped back. "Get the cutter." Within minutes, a member of the forensic crew arrived with the rotary blade. They cut through the thin panel, older concrete than the rest, poured in a hurry. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, curved like a pipe. Inside, a hatch, metal, bolted. A lock was welded over it in the shape of a butterfly. It took 40 minutes to breach the butterfly lock. When the hatch opened, they found a circular corridor, lined in sound-dampening foam. But this one wasn't empty. The floor was covered in chalk drawings. Hundreds of them, childlike scribbles of butterflies, clocks, doors, and faces with no mouths. One phrase repeated, "Don't forget her. Don't forget her. Don't forget her." At the far end of the corridor was a sealed door marked with the number 12 and the phrase, "Subject 12. No audio required." Inside, they found a room unlike the others. No chair, no mirror, no speaker, just a padded cell, entirely white. And in the center, a child's skeleton, curled up, fetal position, next to a torn butterfly plush. Russo turned away as her stomach buckled. The forensic team confirmed what she already knew. Female. Age estimate, 9 to 11. No trauma. No external injury. Starvation likely. In the wall beside the body, scrawled in charcoal, a final note, "I didn't speak. I stayed silent. But you stopped listening anyway." They brought the remains out with care. The media wouldn't be told. Not yet. Russo wrote Subject 12 on the tag herself. Later that night, back in her apartment, she opened the photos again. Each child had left something behind. Each one had tried, somehow, to be remembered. But Subject 12 had drawn the blue square, the symbol of threshold, the place between disappearance and return. Russo stared at her wall of names and symbols. Then she saw it. Every subject's number was associated with a symbol. 3, the hum. 6, observation. 9, static. In 12, silence, infinity. The loop. The list was incomplete. What were subjects 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11? How many more? And were they all still down there? Her phone buzzed again. No caller ID, just a photo. A grainy image of a wall with new writing. It read, We waited in the dark, but not all of us stayed children. And below it, a symbol she hadn't seen before. Not a butterfly, a moth, larger, black, 3 wings, and the number 13. March 25th, 2025. Location, Oak Ridge Mall. Unauthorized subsection, level -2. There was no record of a subject 13, not in the Augustine files, not in the intake logs, not even in the scribbled notes from Samuel Calder's hidden box. But the photo, the wall with the moth, was real. So was the handwriting beneath it. Not all of us stayed children. Detective Adeline Russo had begun to wonder, what if someone survived? Not escaped, survived the silence protocol, lived inside it, adapted, and grew. The first problem was access. The path to level -2 didn't exist on any scan. No vents, no shafts, no crawl spaces. But Kelsa Yan, the acoustic engineer, noticed something strange in room 9, a dead echo at the back wall. Like someone added a layer behind it, she explained, tapping her sound map. It's not solid, it's just empty. A false wall. Behind it, they found another butterfly lock, cracked open. No tool marks, no evidence of recent breach, just open. And beyond it, a narrow stone stairwell, spiraling down into black. No lights, no rails, just cold air that smelled like rust and dirt. 2 Russo descended first. The walls grew tighter the farther they went. The noise dropped away until even her breath sounded wrong. At the base of the stairs, a steel doorway, covered in scratches. Not from tools, from fingernails. Hundreds of them. Above it, a new message burned into the metal. No record, no rescue, just repeat. She opened the door. The corridor beyond was completely different from the other levels. Not clinical, not sterile, hand-built, crude. Uneven concrete and wooden boards, reinforced like a storm shelter. Drawings lined the walls. Not childish, not frantic, precise, intentionally detailed. Sketches of each subject room, wiring diagrams, mirror angles, speaker codes. And at the center of every diagram, a figure, larger than the children, marked with a moth symbol instead of a butterfly, labeled S13. The room at the end was low-ceilinged and damp, lit by a single dim bulb hanging from a cord. In the center, a table covered in old electronics, cassette players, coils of wire, surveillance monitors, most shattered, and one open journal with a moth drawn on the inside cover. Journal of S13. I was not chosen. I was left behind. I heard the doors close. I heard them scream. I was forgotten. So I became the echo. Russo turned the page slowly. Every entry was a blend of schematics, behavior logs, and messages scrawled as if talking to someone else. To the other subjects. You stopped humming. You stopped knocking. But I stayed. I remembered. Russo wasn't alone in the room. She felt it before she heard it. A soft click behind her. She turned. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, thin, face hidden beneath a hooded coat, hands pale and shaking. A heavy scarf covered the mouth. But the voice that emerged was soft, measured, childlike but aged. Did you come to take me out? Russo froze. Who are you? The figure stepped closer. Slow, no aggression. I'm the one they never tested. The one they left when the project ended. The one who watched the lights go out. I'm Subject 13. They sat. No handcuffs, no threats, just silence. Then conversation. 13 wouldn't give a real name, wouldn't remove the scarf, but they spoke, calmly, lucidly, about the trials, the phases, the architecture, the humming. They weren't trying to control us, 13 said. They were trying to prove a point. What point? 13 looked up. Eyes hollow. That silence changes what a person is. That if you take away sound, light, memory, eventually, you can replace the soul. Russo felt the chill settle in her bones. You knew the others? 13 nodded. I saw them through the walls. I made recordings. I mimicked the staff. I hummed so they wouldn't feel alone. I was the voice in the static. You left the messages, Russo said. The photo, the wall writing, the blue square. 13 nodded again. I didn't want you to forget them. Russo's throat tightened. Why now? Why send all this to me? 13 paused, then pulled something from their coat pocket. A cassette, labeled Subject 10, Final Sequence. Because the last door isn't in the mall, 13 said. It's in the city records vault. Behind a false wall they called Stage 3, and you only have 3 days before the new construction crew seals it. They handed her the tape. And when you get there, don't bring a flashlight. She hates the light. March 26th, 2025. Location: Shelby County Municipal Records Vault. Sub-Basement Archive C. It didn't look like much from the outside. Just a nondescript gray building downtown. City seal etched in glass. 2 bored guards at the front desk. No windows on the lower levels. But Subject 13's words stuck in Russo's mind like a thread she couldn't stop pulling. The last door isn't in the mall. Stage 3. Don't bring a flashlight. She left her sidearm and her tactical torch behind. Took only a phone, a recorder, and the cassette labeled Subject 10, Final Sequence 1. Sub-Basement Archive C wasn't listed on the building directory. She had to fake a delivery order to gain access, posing as a courier for internal transit. The freight elevator took her down 4 levels, then stopped at an unmarked floor. Concrete walls, rust-stained pipes, no light fixtures, only emergency bulbs glowing faint orange along the ceiling. This was where old paper records went to die. Boxes of tax assessments, land surveys, permit applications from the 1950s onward, and in the far corner, an unnumbered door, gray steel, half covered by a metal shelving unit. Russo moved it aside. Her heart slowed. The butterfly symbol, painted in chalk, crude, rushed, and above it, Stage 3, do not unseal without clearance. The lock had rusted off. She opened the door. A staircase led down again, tight and spiraling, just like the one under the mall. The walls here weren't foam-lined. They were plastered in pages, documents, intake sheets, blueprints, printed emails, legal warnings, everyone bearing a blacked-out line. She tore one loose. Project Augustine, Phase 3, Target Integration Plan. Urban testing grounds. She kept descending. The light faded, then ended. Total darkness. She followed the steps by touch, one hand pressed to the wall, one foot reaching before each drop. The air changed. It became humid, almost damp, like she'd walked into an underground greenhouse. Then the stairs ended, and the floor beneath her feet turned soft, padded, like the rooms. Her phone buzzed. The signal was gone. She hit record on the audio mic and moved forward. Somewhere ahead, a faint hum began. Like electricity, but not steady. Organic. We will now begin final sequence. The voice echoed from nowhere. She recognized the voice. From the tapes, from the whispered messages. But this time, it was speaking to her. You have heard us, you have remembered, now prove you understand. A panel beside her lit up. A question. Why did the subjects hum? Russo's voice cracked the silence. Because they were afraid. The panel dimmed. A second voice. No. They hummed to stay whole, to hear themselves in the dark. Another question appeared. What is room infinity? She didn't answer this time. And the lights blinked off. Footsteps behind her. Software barefoot. She turned, but saw nothing. Then a voice whispered from directly beside her ear. You're late. A light blinked on ahead. A small room, padded in gray cloth. At the center, a cassette player, already playing. And seated before it, a girl, face hidden by her hair. wearing a party dress covered in ash. She turned her head slowly, not startled, not scared. Her lips moved silently, mouthing, "Don't break the loop." Then she vanished. The cassette played on. Russo sat and listened. The final sequence was not words, it was a pattern, knocks, pauses, breaths, and a hum that grew louder every time it looped back to the beginning. Then, behind her, a speaker clicked. Subject 10 failed to comply, terminated. A second voice followed. Calmer, mechanical. Replace subject, repeat phase. Russo stood up, heart racing. "No," she whispered, and said it louder. "No." The lights came on. All of them. Rows of mirror-lined rooms, some shattered, some empty, 10 in all. Each room now lit with a spotlight over the center chair, and standing in each room's doorway, a figure, children, wearing party clothes, eyes wide, unblinking, all barefoot, all humming. The girl from room infinity stood at the center. She lifted a finger to her lips. "Shh." Then pointed to the floor. Russo looked down. A new blue square, drawn in chalk. And inside it, Subject 14, Observer initiated, March the 27th, 2025. Location, Stage 3 chamber, Observer control sector, undisclosed depth. The blue square pulsed beneath her feet. Not light, not energy. Memory. Detective Adeline Russo stood frozen inside the chalk lines, surrounded by the silent, humming figures of children who should have been gone. Lost, buried, but here they were, each occupying the doorways of their respective rooms. Subject 3, 6, 9, even the barefoot girl from room infinity. They weren't solid. Not entirely. Not projections either. They were echoes, intentions made visible. And they were looking at her. On the far wall, a mirror lit up. But Russo saw no reflection. Instead, words appeared, letter by letter. You entered the sequence. You triggered the loop. You are now Subject 14. The mirror dimmed, replaced by a grainy video, archival footage from the 90s. Children being led down a hallway, laughing, unaware. Then the camera cut. Static. Next frame. A different hallway. Diamond soys, foam-lined. No smiles. The same children. Now silent. Eyes glassy. Mouths closed tight. The tape ended, and the speaker clicked on. "Would you like to remember now?" She stumbled backward. "No," Russo whispered. "I didn't come here to be a subject. You observed. You followed. You listened. That's what Subject 14 does." She felt the air shift. The humming grew louder, not angry, not threatening, insistent. The children weren't moving, but their humming synced. Perfect harmony, mechanical in rhythm, human in pain. She closed her eyes. They want me to see it, to understand, to remember what they couldn't forget. She opened her eyes and the room changed. Gone was the facility. Gone were the rooms. She was in the food court, but not the ruins, the original. Sunlight through skylights. Laughter, balloons. It was March 3rd, 1997. A birthday party. A woman, young, tired, handed out cake. The children were playing tag, and at the center, a little girl with dark curls, wearing a butterfly pin. Russo froze. It was her. She was 7. She remembered this now. The party wasn't for her, but she'd wandered from her mother, into the hallway, drawn by a blue square painted near a service door. There had been humming. A voice had told her, "If you knock, someone will answer." But she hadn't knocked. She turned back. She was the one who got away. No one ever believed her story, not even her mother. The vision faded. Back to the underground room. The mirror now showed her own police file. Adeline Russo, age 34, former CPD Cold Case Division known incident, unverified childhood trauma, Oak Ridge Mall. A new message. That memory was suppressed. You were always Subject 14. Her knees buckled. I'm not one of them, she whispered. But you heard us. You remembered. And so we gave you the sequence. In front of her, the children stepped forward, closer now. Each one looked older than before, as if memory aged them differently. Each stopped at the edge of the blue square and whispered in voices that were barely audible. Finish it. Close the loop. Tell the world. Subject 13 appeared last. No scarf this time. A man now. Gaunt. Eyes hollow but aware. You know what you saw, he said. You know what they buried. He placed a box at her feet. The last tape. It contains everything. Stage 3 Augustine. The design. The deaths. But if you take it out, you'll never sleep again. Russo looked down. The box was labeled R Infinity. Final Archive. Play to remember. She took it. The moment her fingers closed around the box, the humming stopped. All the children turned, walked back into their rooms. The lights shut off, one by one, until only the blue square remained lit. And then, that too, disappeared. She was standing in a blank concrete chamber, alone. No doors, no mirrors, only the box. March 28, 2025, location, Russo's apartment, 3:12 a.m. The box sat on her desk. Unmarked now. No label, no hum, just matte black plastic and a single cassette inside. Aged, warped slightly at the edge, but still functional. Russo stared at it for an hour before moving. Everything she'd seen, everything she'd found. The rooms, the numbers, the names. They all led here. A single tape, final archive. She loaded it into the player, pressed play. Tape crackle silence, then static, then a voice, calm, precise, male. This is Project Augustine, final oversight report. Timestamp March 31st, 1997. Stage 3 was executed. Observer designation confirmed. Control variables consistent. Subjects 1 through 12 terminated or discarded. Russo gripped the edge of the table. Terminated. Subject 13 retained for archival continuity. Subject 14 was initiated per emergency protocol. No additional observers authorized. You are hearing this because you were exposed to memory loops embedded in sub-level media streams. Congratulations, you were receptive. That makes you dangerous. A second voice took over. Female. Calm. Clinical. If you are listening to this recording, you have accessed a sealed memory structure. That structure exists in tandem with real locations, but operates independently. It is both memory and place. You are not in danger, unless you attempt disclosure. If you attempt disclosure, loop will initiate. If you attempt deletion, loop will initiate. If you stay silent, the sequence ends here. You choose. The tape clicked, then rewound, and began again. By itself. This is Project Augustine Final Oversight Report. Russo ripped it from the player. Her hands shook. The tape still spun, even outside the device. She dropped it. The humming returned. Later that morning, she visited a journalist. Not one of the media clowns camped outside the mall. Someone she trusted. David Halberg, a local investigations blogger with a record of blowing open corruption stories. She gave him the notes, the audio, the names, the blueprint of level -1, the recordings of the children humming, and the tape. If anything happens to me, she said, run it all. Halberg blinked. Are you serious? She only nodded. This is deep black ops, Russo. Military-grade psych warfare. You're talking about dozens of missing kids, and no one's ever gone public. Because no one ever made it to the end. She said quietly. That night she packed a bag. She couldn't stay. Not in the city. Not near the mall. Not near the humming. She left no note. Just one envelope, addressed to her lieutenant. Inside, a flash drive with video from Room Infinity. A printed transcript of Subject 13's testimony, a photo of the blue square, and a handwritten message. Don't open the box, but don't let them seal it again. As she crossed state lines, the humming faded. But she didn't turn off her recorder. She didn't speak aloud. She didn't sleep. Because the children's voices followed her now. Don't forget her. Stay quiet. They'll hear you thinking. And worst of all, you're one of us now. April 3rd, 2025. Location, unknown location, remote broadcast uplink. The screen blinked once. Then the upload began. File name, level -1. Archive, full .mp4 size, 3.7 gigabytes, timestamp, 2:14 a.m. The video contained everything. Blueprints, photos, Polaroids, transcripts, schematic overlays, cassette audio from Subjects 3, 6, 10, footage from Room Infinity, grainy but real, the interview with Subject 13, the blue square, the butterfly, the moth. And finally, Detective Adeline Russo's full narrative, recorded in a single unbroken take. My name is Adeline Russo. I was a child at Oak Ridge Mall the day 5 others vanished. I was one knock away from disappearing too, and I have spent the last 31 days following their footsteps. She describes the observation room, the humming room, Room Infinity. Subject 13. She holds up the box on camera. Doesn't open it. This is all real, she says, and it will happen again unless you remember. Do not let them build over the foundation. Do not let them pave over the silence. Do not forget the ones who never came back. She stares into the lens. They don't want to be rescued. They just want to be heard. So listen. Then, black screen. The video went live on April 4th, 2025. Uploaded to a dozen platforms. Some copies vanished within an hour. Others went viral. Conspiracy channels tore it apart. Reddit lit up. True crime YouTubers made 3-hour breakdowns. Theories spread. But some viewers said something stranger. They claimed that after watching the full tape, they heard humming in the static of their speakers. A blue square drawn in sidewalk chalk near their homes, the voice of a child whispering, "You heard us." Most ignored it. Some didn't. 2 weeks later, a construction crew arrived to flatten what remained of Oak Ridge Mall. They got as far as the sub-foundation before stopping. A worker named Darren Caldwell broke into a panic during concrete core drilling. He ran out screaming. Wouldn't go back. All he said was, "There's still someone humming down there, and she's not a child anymore."